These are two very good sports sedans, and that's exactly why they're so frequently cross-shopped against one another by folks considering either of them, whether new or slightly used.
And that's why I made this video, because I care about you, and I want you to have solid quality information to help you make a better decision.
So is the BMW M340i better for taller drivers than the Genesis G70, and which one has the most spacious rear seat and the longest wheelbase and the biggest trunk? And which car is physically largest and by exactly how much?
And just what are the implications of choosing one of these 6-cylinder engines over the other when it comes to your gas bill? I've been crunching some numbers and I've got a full fuel cost audit coming up for you.
Both these rocket sedans run boosted 6-cylinder engines, 8-speed automatics, and all-wheel drive with limited slip rear axle. The M340i launched alongside the latest Generation 3 series on a new platform for the 2019 model year. It got a 2022 model year facelift that you can see in the unit I'm driving here. And that's with new exterior styling and an updated interior with the new big screen and toggle blade style shifter. So keep that in mind for 2022 onwards if you're shopping in the used market. There's also the M340i, that's your two-door option running on a clone of the 340i's platform, where it arrived for model year 2021 and onwards in this generation. Those machines are built in Mexico and Germany, while the Genesis G70 is built in South Korea. Its 3.3-liter V6 with twin turbo does 365 horsepower and 376 pounds of torque, and the 3-liter turbo straight 6 in the BMWs make it 382 horsepower and 369 pounds of torque. This is the first generation Genesis G70, which launched in 2019, the same year as the latest 7th generation BMW 3 Series.
The G70 was also facelifted in 2022 at exactly the same time as the M340i as well.
For 0 to 60, expect about 3.9 seconds from the BMW and about 4.5 from the Genesis. Neither machine is a slouch, but man, that BMW really moves. Shop carefully in the used market and you'll even find the G70 available with a 6-speed manual transmission, though only with the 2-liter 4-cylinder engine and rear-wheel drive configuration. In a lot of ways, there's not much separating these two machines when it comes to physical size and volume. The BMW's wheelbase is slightly longer by a little over half an inch, that's 1.4 centimeters if you like, on overall length. The M340i is 1.3 inches or 3.3 centimeters longer than the Genesis G70. But on width, it's G70 in the lead by 0.9 of an inch or 2.3 centimeters. The G70 also sits 1.3 inches lower in terms of overall height compared to the M340i, which beats the G70 on ground clearance by 0.3 of an inch or less than 1 centimeter. So in terms of those measurements, on average you're talking a difference of something like 2%. There are bigger differences in other areas, for instance curb weight, where the M340i comes in about 214 pounds heavier than the G70. That's a difference of about 5%, and in terms of cargo capacity, the M340i beats the G70 by 6.5 cubic feet. That's an advantage of 62%. For front seat headroom with or without the sunroof, it's G70 in the lead by 1.1 inches versus the M340i. That's 2.8 centimeters more headroom in the Genesis if you like, a difference of about 3%, and on front legroom, it's also the G70 in the lead by 0.6 of an inch, that's 1.5 centimeters if you like. For rear seat legroom, the M340i takes it by 0.4 of an inch or 1 centimeter. That's a slight advantage in terms of rear legroom for the BMW by a little over 1%. And on shoulder room, front and rear, these two are basically tied. So when it comes to how big these machines are and how much room you'll find inside, there isn't anything too major to point out.
That's not the case with gas consumption, so let me show you these important numbers.
This is my favorite part of these videos because I get to crunch a bunch of numbers and then tell you what I learned. So let's start off with the engines. The turbo straight 6 in the M340i uses mild hybrid boost on top of turbocharging to give it a major advantage in low RPM throttle response versus the Genesis, as well as advantages to overall smoothness, quiet, and performance. To drive 100 kilometers, or 60 miles if you like, in the M340i, that engine needs to drink 9 liters of premium unleaded. If you're a Canadian paying $1.80 for a liter of premium gas, then driving 100 kilometers or 60 miles in the M340i costs you $16.20. If you're in the USA, you're probably paying about $4.30 a gallon for premium, and with the M340i's 25 mile per gallon combined fuel economy rating, that's a total cost of about $10.32 American to drive 60 miles. In the Genesis G70 with the 3.3-liter twin-turbo V6, you get a bit less horsepower than the BMW at 365, alongside a very slight advantage in torque. To drive 100 kilometers in the Genesis G70 with this engine, you'll need 11.5 liters of premium unleaded on average. That's 2.5 liters more gas for every 100 kilometers you drive versus the BMW. And based on the math above, then driving 100 kilometers therefore costs you $20.70 Canadian. In the USA, this Genesis G70 is rated for 20 miles per gallon combined, and with premium gas at $4.30 a gallon, then it's a cost of $12.90 to drive 60 miles. So to summarize so far, in Canada it'll cost you an extra $4.50 Canadian in fuel for every 100 kilometers or 60 miles you drive the Genesis versus the BMW. And in the US, the fuel consumption penalty to cover that same distance in the Genesis versus the BMW is about $2.60 US. The average Canadian drives about 15,000 kilometers a year, meaning an annual fuel bill of 2,430 Canadian dollars from the BMW and 3,105 Canadian dollars from the Genesis.
An annual difference of $675 for the average driver in Canada.
Suppose you live in rural Canada like me, where you might drive 25,000 kilometers a year instead because everything is further apart the further north you go. And if that's the case, then it's an annual fuel bill of 4,050 Canadian dollars from the BMW and 5,175 Canadian from the Genesis, an annual difference of 1,125 Canadian dollars for the higher mileage rural Canadian. The average American drives about 14,000 miles per year, and given the math above, that's an annual fuel bill of 2,408 American dollars from the BMW and 3,010 American dollars from the Genesis. So an annual difference of perhaps $600 for the average driver in the USA. If you're a higher mileage American driver doing 18,000 miles per year, the fuel costs work out to be $3,096 US dollars from the BMW and $3,870 US dollars from the Genesis, so an annual difference of $774 US dollars. So that's easily a $500 annual savings on gas, maybe even more, depending on how much you drive and where you live. Chances are you'll be paying more for the comparable BMW. So don't forget the built-in fuel savings versus the G70. Over the time you spend owning this car, it could be several $1,000s. So it is entirely feasible to spend more on the BMW up front and get most of that back as fuel savings.
So a bit of an extreme example here, but if you're a high mileage Canadian driver like me, then at 7 years of ownership, you will have saved almost $8,000 in fuel by choosing the M340i over the G70, and that's assuming today's fuel prices.
So if that information helps you to make a better purchase decision between these two machines, then please let me know which one you're choosing in the comments section down below, and hit those like and subscribe buttons while you're down there so you don't miss a new upload. From Sudbury, Ontario, I'm Justin Pritchard, and we'll see you in the next video.